Watching Kyle's unboxing videos again?
Yeah, he always finds the coolest... No way! A robot dog? Gotta ask where he got it.
Or use your Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. Just draw a circle around the dog on your screen, and it shows you where to buy it right in the app.
Whoa, I just learned a new trick. And that for once, I beat Kyle to the next big thing.
Circle it, find it with the new Galaxy S24 Ultra and circle the search with Google. Get yours now at Samsung.com. Internet connection required. Results may vary based on visuals.
A fabulous free kick from Leighton Baines. Dawson, what a finish from Glenn Dawson, it's 2-0. It's scored by Tim Cahill in injury time for Everton. Matheson, the 16-year-old, to Wilbraham, the 40-year-old. Stunning from James Rodriguez. And here into Henderson! And Ian Henderson, right on half-time.
Welcome everybody to the Men in Blue podcast. My name is Greg, I'm a Rochdale supporter. This is I think it's our first anniversary year of doing the podcast, which has crept up quick. We've been doing this as a bit of a hobby during lockdown and it's continued. Jimmy, we've got Jimmy as ever. How you doing, Jimmy? Everton fan, you okay?
Hi, happy birthday mate, happy first birthday. Who'd have thought we'd still be going after a year? Yeah, it's really got out of hand, this whole podcast thing, doesn't it? Yeah, not too bad. You know, Everton win the FA Cup, so it's all good. But also we're getting relegated, so we're going to just do a Wigan. It's great. It's just brilliant.
Super duper. We've also got another Everton fan, Tom. How you doing, Tom? You okay?
Yeah, good. Thank you, Greg. Thank you very much for having me on. Happy first birthday, boys, and it's a pleasure to be here for your first steps as a toddler.
It kind of sounds weird, but that's what it is. That's what it is. Oh, Matt's joined us as well, so I'll introduce Matt shortly. We've also got Danny, Rochdale fan. How you doing, Danny? You okay?
Hi, I'm good as well, yeah. Congratulations on the year of the podcast. Hopefully there's many more to come.
Hopefully we don't get cancelled. Super. We've got Tranmere fan Declan, who's been with us for a few episodes as well. How you doing, Dec? You okay?
Yeah, all good. Pleasure to be back, boys, and again, wishing you all the best on your first birthday. I've enjoyed going back through the archives on Spotify over the last few weeks, so yeah, many more to come, hopefully.
Superb. And last but not least, we've got Matt, Everton fan. How you doing, bud? You okay? You must be happy with the win at the weekend.
Delighted. It was nice to watch match today on Saturday for the first time in however many months. It was really quite nice. Yeah, delighted. Can't complain.
Late for your own birthday party. Late for your own birthday party, Matthew John Driver. Shocking behaviour.
Leave me alone.
How many teas are you having?
Too many.
Just the one. I'm not actually eating it yet. It's currently sat in front of me waiting to be eaten.
Oh, high quality content here. We're going to listen to Matt ASMR eat his tea. Can't wait.
Professional as always.
Indeed. Happy birthday, gents.
We're going to dive straight into Everton with Jimmy, Matt and Tom going for that one. So, Jim, obviously Everton won at the weekend, beat Leeds 3-0. What was your overall take?
We actually, we scored 3 and didn't concede. So that's unheard of for Everton for about 5 years. I think it's the first time we'd scored 2 goals in the first half of any game this season, which was depressing to actually read that start match today. And I think we played really well. I think it was fine margins at the time. I think it was Rafinha and Rodrigo for Leeds hit the bar. And I do think on a different day we could have gone at 2-2 at half time rather than 2-0. And I must say, Bielsa, that Leeds side's very up and down, but I do like watching them. They are exciting. They're completely erratic. You have no idea what you're going to get from 1 week to the next with them. But there was always a worry with that game that you thought after the cup game against Brentford, you thought, Lampard's going to hopefully turn it round. And then Newcastle performance was absolutely insipid. It was diabolical, to be perfectly fair. And I don't blame the manager necessarily for that. I just still blame the same collective of players that have performed badly for about 700 managers now. But no, it was nice to beat a relegation rival. We haven't done much of that this season. We haven't done much of beating anyone this season, to be perfectly honest with you. So it was just nice to win. And like I say, I actually put up on my own Instagram. First time I've watched match today in how long? I wonder why that is. So yeah, if you win 3-0, you can't complain, can you? Really? I mean, I'll find a way of doing so, but it's fine. Just need to keep the momentum going now into the next, certainly the next month or so.
Got a quick question for Tom, actually. So obviously, I'm just looking at FOTMob. This is the app that we use that we've been talking about a few episodes, but it seems like you were 2-0 up.
Not a sponsorship.
Not a sponsorship. Everton were 2-0 up in the first 20 odd minutes. Really, at what point do you think that you're home and dry? Is it still something where Everton can concede a few, even though you've got the early goals? Is that a possibility with Everton?
Well, after Newcastle at home during Ancelotti's first season, where we conceded 2 post the 91st minute, it was the only time I've ever said it watching Everton that, wow, it's so comfortable watching us. This is so strange. And we went on to draw the game 2-2. So I don't think you're ever home and dry as an Everton fan. However, I just want to say I really like the way they're playing under Lampard. The attacking positions, the fact that there's repeated patterns of play, the fact that there seems to be a plan is so refreshing to what we've been used to, which obviously Benitez murder ball, I've seen a call online, and then Ancelotti's kind of, well, you saw it last night, his kind of every man behind the ball and then hope the big man gets onto it, kind of like a stylish Sean Dyche. And then we've had Allardyce before that. We had Marco Silva, who had some ideas, but I don't think he ever really knew how to get them across. I think communication was his main downfall, particularly with players that didn't speak Portuguese in the squad. But seeing Lampard thumping his chest in front of the Gladys Street after seeing the most exciting Everton performance I can remember seeing, not since kind of perhaps Martinez's first season, just filled me with hope. And look, I'm not getting carried away. We're still in the relegation battle. I can't see us winning the cup. But it's so refreshing to go to the match and like the man who's in the dugout.
We spoke about in the last episode that we were talking about the golden generation of the England team from a few years ago. Obviously Gerrard, Lampard, Rooney, all managers. And there's a bit of a split debate whether ever Jimmy or Matt would fancy him as the manager. Obviously, we've not got to the main headline really that Everton have appointed Frank Lampard as manager, but any of your thoughts on that particular appointment? Anybody, Tom, Matt, Jim?
At the time, we pardon me. At the time that we were looking for managers, it was the best appointment, I think, on paper. The Rooney shouts were interesting, but I don't think it was his time. I think we talked about this in the last podcast. I think I was sort of saying, not yet. I love what he's doing at Derby. Also, shouts out to anyone who's not seen his documentary on Amazon. It's a really good watch. Recommend it. He comes across it as really quite intelligent, which for Rooney is quite strange. But you can see where his football brain really does take and how he's really good on, especially with getting message across to players as well. But he's done well so far. I mean, the Newcastle game was a tough watch. I would probably put it more down to Newcastle's general atmosphere. I think they got the better of us. I think they really got behind them, a bit like we did against Leeds and against Brentford. And I think we buckled just under a bit of pressure. They got the early goal. And then, a minute later, quite beautifully, Holgate scores in inverted commas at one end, and then own goals at the other end. It was quite nice to see that sort of weird juxtaposition. But he's saying and doing all the right things, and I think what he's got, I agree with Tom. He's got some playing some exciting football, which is what we want. He's brought some good players on deadline day. The defence still looks a little bit light because of injuries and other reasons. And I think we'll be okay. I don't see us getting into the top half anytime soon, into this season. But I think we've got enough at home to be comfortable. And hopefully then in the summer we can once again restart and push on for top 8, whatever it's going to be next season, whatever their plans are going to be. But I think what he has done well, Frank, is bringing a lot of people around him who are very experienced. And I think he looks at them and knows who to trust. Ashley Cole was a very interesting appointment. I wasn't aware he was doing really well until I read up, and I was like, no, he's doing a pretty good job in coaching. So who knows? There's a lot to be excited about. We've just got to get through the next couple of weeks. We've got some tough games. Southampton on Saturday, I think it is going to be a tough one. Then we've got City the week after, which, I mean, they barely got out of second gear last night and beat Sport Lisbon 5-0. So they are a frightening side, so who knows? I think you take that game as a one-off, expecting to lose, but have a go and see what happens. Who knows?
Just jumping on that point about surrounding himself with the right people. I think these so-called golden generation managers, Lampard, Rooney, Gerrard, and I'm sure John Terry will be added to that list in a short while. They're kind of a throwback to that old style of kind of 80s, 90s manager where they're not on the training pitch running the sessions and they're not coming in with all these fresh ideas. They have that kind of facilitatory pragmatism where they're going, well, I know this man is really good at coaching set pieces. This person's really good at coaching this side of the side. Look at is it Rossini at Derby County, for example. You have Paul Clements at our place, who's worked with the very best in Europe. And what they're kind of doing is trying to marry the elements between the footballing staff, the players, and the fans. And that's the ultimate triumvirate, really. And I think a lot of managers have come in before at Goodison and not really understood what the fan base expects. I know Rafa knew the city, but knowing the city doesn't quite mean you know the fan base. And I think Everton's a simple equation. It's football on the deck, quickly, play quickly, and when we don't have it, we fight aggressively back. It's not a complicated equation, and I think some people have lost sight of that, whereas I think Lampard has looked at the club, he's looked at the current structures in place, and he's looked at the brittle fan base, shall we say, and decided to take action that ensures it's something, like I said earlier, we can just enjoy.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with the Lampard appointment, really, for me, because I liken it in the spirit of the current season. Not that I ever personally experienced this, of course, but when you got someone like a Valentine's date interested in you, and you're like, oh no, not them. But as time goes on and you realise you're getting more and more interest, again, you can tell I can't relate to the story in reality. There's more people getting interested in you, go, actually, you know what, compared to what's out there, that first date doesn't sound so bad. And I think, yeah, I didn't want Lampard. You know, at first I thought, oh, he's a massive Tory, it's just going to be a meme, it's just going to be like all the laughing and then the straight face. Oh, but seriously, I thought, is it just going to be, you know, he's done well with Derby but didn't get them up. He took a young Chelsea team into the Champions League, but then when he had money to spend, he bottled it with the team that would then go on to win the European Cup under Tuchel. There were so many things for me that were sort of going against him, but I have to say, I've been, from the way he's carried himself from the moment he walked through the door, I've been really impressed. He's looked confident, he's looked assured, and he's looked like he has united a very fractured fan base, as Tom and Matt have alluded to, with the way he wants to play, with the way he comes out, and he says a lot of the right things. And I think ultimately he's somebody, a bit like we could with Carlo, but he's somebody that the supporters can all get behind. It's a bit weird, don't get me wrong, hearing the Gladys Street singing Frank Lampard's name, because he'd scored that many bloody goals against us in his career, including some absolute screamers, and in the cup final. But I think he is somebody who, if you get young players playing, like you say, quick football, aggressive football, doesn't have to be pretty over time, you know, just show the players show they give a shit, basically, then that's what we want to see, and they care and play for the shirt. And I think he is, well, we're seeing that with the likes of Iwobi, and I can't think who else it was now that had a really good game on Saturday that was like, what, really, that person? But Iwobi was, like, personally really good, which I never thought I would ever say that on this podcast. So if he gets players fighting, there's like a whole pile of new signings in itself there if they get the turns around the fortunes of some talented players.
I think Jimmy broke up for a bit of that, but with this recording that we do, it seems to oddly keep the recording even though everyone else can't hear him. So every time when we get to editing, we can still hear his audio, which is quite a strange experience. But
high tech, that was great.
That was, yeah. I think Declan wants to say something.
Sadly, you can still hear me.
Yeah, just from what I could get there from Jimmy in terms of him talking about the golden generation and a little bit of what Tom was saying as well about the likes of Lampard and Rooney and so on, and potentially Terry and that in future years to come. I think as well they realised that although at a club level they were all very, very successful, at an international level, representing a wide range of people, up and down the country, and really trying to, unite us. I think they kind of feel like they may still have a bit of a point to prove that they can do it on that kind of next level. So they can go and knock goals in for fun at club level and do this and do that and be successful in Europe and so on. But just that kind of missing piece of the jigsaw that they never quite got with England. As Matt was saying earlier on, that Rooney documentary was it made me see him in a different light as well. I think I maybe took for granted as I was growing up how good he was. And I think it was always that, my dad's a Liverpool fan, from early childhood, and a lot of my family are Reds as well. And I think it was always ingrained that, we don't like Rooney because he's a blue. And actually when you take, the shirt away from him, or take whatever badge he's wearing on his shirt, you take that away, you look at his stats and that he's one heck of a player. And I think, again, with Lampard, I think there was always that thing of, he's played for, your southern club, your Chelsea and this, that and the other. There's always been money there and stuff. But actually, when you take all that away and you look at him as a player and now as a manager, there's a real gem there. And I hope that he does do well at Everton. I think it's a cracking platform for him, and the right kind of... again, no kind of disrespect to Everton, but the right kind of level. He's not going into that kind of top four club like he did with Chelsea. I think that was very much not a panicked appointment, but he's been here, he knows the club. It's the worst excuse in the book for me that a manager knows the club. If they're not the right manager for the job, they're not the right manager. But I think Everton's a really good platform where he's got the potential, as you were saying there, with good recruitment over the summer, get rid of all the deadwood that's in the squad, and quite obviously in the squad. And there's no reason why he can't push Everton into that kind of top 10, outskirts of top 7 next season, and again the following season. There's a real opportunity there for success for him, and quite quickly as well.
Yeah, but I agree with that. I mean, it's quite funny. We were all, for me in particular, Steven Gerrard, one of those players that it was ingrained in my skull from an early age to just dislike heavily, and I did, because he was Liverpool's best player. And he would get them out of the shit countless times. Champions League finals, there were all these games, Merseyside derbies, he scored hat-tricks in. But as you get older, and as he's gone into management, I actually quite like him. I think he comes across really well. He comes across as a good manager. That quite funny shot, I know it was there were two. I went to the Man U Aston Villa FA Cup game, and as he came out of the tunnel, obviously you come up, tunnel on the Stretford end, it's like there on the left-hand side. And he just turned around and looked at it, and it was sort of like I kind of respect that. I like the fact you've just sort of looked at him and just gone, yeah, okay. And you know he's going to get it in both barrels. And it happened at Goodison. He got it completely in both barrels at Goodison, as he would expect, as he knew was going to happen. He got the better of us that day, got a win out of it. And it was just a little wry smile to the back end. There was part of me was like, you bastard. But I kind of respect that. I quite like that. And there's a whole podcast you could do on that golden generation of England team. The sad part is, I think, the club rivalries were so good and it was so exciting to watch. The international team suffered for it, and the thing we're getting now is the international team is so good and so well gelled together. You've lost that little bit of bite in those games, I think. You look at Liverpool United, Chelsea Liverpool, all those kind of games. You don't quite get that same intensity, but you've also got an England team that we all like and we all want to see do well, obviously for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think it's been a strange appointment, Lampard, at first. I agree with James. It was like, oh god, here comes a Tory. This is all we need. But he's done everything right. He gets what we as fans want to see, which is a side that has a go. It's not a difficult concept. We want to see a side that just gives a shit for 90 minutes. We don't want to see a side that rolls over and gets their belly tickled by most teams. And that will come. I think he started well, and hopefully it continues.
Just a quick question for Danny, actually. Obviously, Everton have got a new manager, and we've seen it in League Two before now, where they call it the new manager bounce, don't they? Where currently it's happening with Oldham, with Sheridan. Is that a bit of a myth, do you think, Danny? New manager bounce on any level in general of football? Do you think, is that a bit of a...
I think it can be, but again, he's bringing in the right team around him with his coaching staff. The new player recruits in the likes of Dele Alli and Donny van der Beek and stuff like that at Everton. I think sometimes it's just trying to put your point across and getting the team to play the way you like them to play on the front foot more, close down the ball a bit quicker and actually play forward. I think they sat back a lot under Benitez. Lampard's now come in and they're playing on that front foot, and I think they are seeing the rewards from it. They're not a bad side. Thought it was a strange one selling Lucas Digne to Villa. He seems to be one of the better players. But again, he's picked up the right players in Dele Alli. I think he can now shine. He's got a platform to prove himself just the same as Lampard has. I think at Oldham, they've always had the team there as well. I've never felt confident that they would go down either. I think, again, it's just showing that commitment and playing football in the right way and actually putting the effort in for the full 90 minutes.
Absolutely spot on. Yeah, no, I think the same. It's I don't know if to look too much into that. Sometimes we were talking on a few episodes ago about XG goals and things like that, and do we, as fans, look too much into that? And I was thinking before we started the podcast, like, is the new manager bounce too much of a thing to look into? Bit of a question for Tom, actually. Obviously, Lampard's the manager of Everton. He signed a few decent players in the January transfer window. Obviously, Danny's just alluded to a few of them with Donny van der Beek, Dele Alli. With the other candidates that were in line for the Everton job, do you think they could have pulled in those type of players? Or is it because Frank's a fairly big name somewhat that he's managed to do that because of his name? Or is that just something I'm looking too much into?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we did half of our business in the window before Lampard even came in, and they were Benitez signings. If you look at Nathan Patterson and Mikalenko, which, by the way, were positions that we needed to fill in. But I do think when you look at Dele Alli and you look at Donny van der Beek, I mean, who's out there, bar maybe Gerrard and Vieira, that is better for them, particularly Dele Alli, in terms of making late runs into the box, being that creative outlet in a side. On his day, there was no one better in world football at that than Frank Lampard. So surely that has some magnetism for him. But I just wanted to make a point about Lucas Digne as well. I'm actually in the minority of Everton fans, I think, in believing that was actually quite a good deal for us. It's £25 million for a player who's 29 years old. And also, it's easy to forget, he was a superb player and is a superb player going forward. But defensively, he'd get done by anyone with the tiniest bit of pace every single week. And it got more and more frustrating watching him, because you were watching it going, this guy cannot play left back. He would have been a brilliant left winger. So I don't think it's the end of the world. I saw a lot of kind of extreme takes on Twitter. And if rumours are to be believed as well, he was the mole, so to speak, for the Athletic and the various leaks that were coming out about the camp. So if you look at it with that and the context of his poor defensive work, is it that big a loss? It doesn't make me feel like when Rooney left all those years ago, let's put it that way.
Tom, you're taking the words out of your mouth about Lucas Digne. Other than I'll say is, yes, he was suspect at the back. Aston Villa fans are now finding out how poor defensively he is. Which, in a way, though, I can see why Rafa didn't like him and why he didn't like Rafa. But do you not think that Digne might have worked better now in Lampard's system, being more attacking? I know it's all like complete conjecture because he's not here. But that's when we spoke about the half and half kind of window, half Benitez, half Lampard window. The thing, we sold Digne, sacked Rafa, and then brought in a manager that's more attacking. I just think, if we had just kept hold of Digne, he'd have probably worked. I mean, not against Mikolenko. I think he's played really well whenever he's featured for us. Considering he's just come from Ukraine and it's a completely new experience for him and a step up in class from Dynamo Kiev. I just think, Dina could have really worked better in Lampard's system and with Ashley Cole coaching him. But at the same time, I take on board what you say with the price and the age of him.
Yeah, I think you're doing John Joe Kenny a disservice there as well with his performance on Saturday and how good he was at left back. But I also think that you have to be realistic. We are totally hamstrung by financial fair play rules. We are not in a position to be looking at the market and going, right, who do we want? We need to look at our own squad first and go, right, who can we sell? Richarlison, for example, absolutely love the bloke. I think he's a fantastic player. Has so much fight in him. But if a £60 million offer comes along for him, we're foolish to give it a blanket no. So whilst it's great as fans to go, well, we've got all this money and stuff, I don't think people realise how dire the financial situation actually is. Those signings were only possible for the sale of Luca Dean. Now, say what you like, but we were desperate for Patterson. We were desperate for another midfielder, whether it was Van der Beek or Dele Alli. And we were desperate for a backup left back, which ironically we got rid of our first choice left back for. So it's a bit of a mess. And that's why I think the most important appointment at Everton Football Club this year is going to be our new director of football. That has to be an appointment that is well thought out, directly targeted in terms of recruitment, and perhaps most importantly, allowed to do their job. Because Marcel Brands clearly didn't see eye to eye with the club hierarchy, and he clearly knows a thing or two about football. So it didn't seem quite right, but they have to get this appointment right, and whoever it is, they have to give 100% backing to.
There's rumours it's the ex-Spurs director of football, isn't it? Or whose name I've completely forgotten.
Yeah, that's the rumour, but it's all it's all conjecture.
Is it not that Damien Comoli?
Some of that, yeah. I can't remember the guy's name. I saw it the other day.
He
left
was at Liverpool,
recently.
wasn't he, Comoli? Or I don't know. I've not seen, but that's the only Spurs director of football I can think of. It's been.
I don't know, it was last week. I read it. There's rumours he's coming in at some point.
I hate to I hate to be boring in this kind of conversation, but it needs to be someone whose track record is more financially heavy than football at the moment. We're not in a position to be kind of scouting kind of wonder kids from South America. We need to balance those books, and then we can progress.
They need to get the club
really. Yeah, Graham Sharp's your director of football.
I was just looking at the league before we started this podcast, and obviously I think Dale and Everton are in very similar positions. I think we're both 5 from the relegation zones. Question for Matt, actually. Do you think Lampard is up for what could be a possible relegation scrap? Is that still a possibility?
Yeah, I think so. I said before, I think we'll have enough at home. I think they'll make Goodison a bit of a bear pit again, and that will give us enough. Away from home, who knows who turns up with Everton half the time. We've got a pretty tough run in at away from home. Goodison, I don't think it's too terrible, apart from City, but then City are just a joke anyway. I think so. I think he's shown already that there's enough in that squad, if you get them playing, that on the day they can really beat anyone with a bit of luck. But yeah, I think so. I think we'll be okay. The annoying thing is, if we just sat Benitez back in, let's say November, October, who knows where we could be? We could be top half, comfortable, all right, nothing special, but we wouldn't be in this mess. But that's the power of hindsight, as they call it.
He should have gone after the 5-2 against Watford.
Oh yeah, we went to that game.
11 games before he even got sacked. I was coming out saying he needs to go. The issue when teams collapse that badly. That's a purely coaching problem.
Absolutely.
That's not players not doing their jobs. That's just a complete meltdown on every single level.
But the issue from day one, and we talked about this in earlier podcasts, was that he had to get it spot on from day one. And we had an alright start. He had, was it 3 wins and 4, wherever it was. But the second the football didn't work, or didn't look to be any premise of what we were doing, the fans turned on him. And as soon as the fans turned on him at Everton, you pretty much a goner. Let's be honest. And it was so early. It was just it was destined to fail from the start.
I don't think it was the fact that it was Rafa, though. I think if Duncan Ferguson was getting results like that and playing that style of football, I think the fans would turn on him. I think there's too much made of the fact Rafa was Liverpool manager and not enough of the fact that his football was absolutely crap. So that was what my problem with him wasn't that he was Liverpool manager. I mean, I'd have Brendan Rodgers, I'd have Jurgen Klopp right now, but he's a man 10 years past his best. You know, he went to China and didn't do very well. He is living off that Newcastle job, which again, easy to forget. He got them relegated. So it swings and roundabouts really, and I think that we've seen again the classic media bias of little Everton, how dare they want more, and let's pat them on the head. They should take Rafa because he's won a Champions League, albeit 17 years ago, but he still won a Champions League. And they were lucky having Carlo Ancelotti. And now apparently we're overestimating our manager. So we're not going to win, but hopefully moving forward we can just win games. That's all I'm asked about right now.
The hilarity of, I think it was Carragher and Neville on Monday Night Football saying that he'd get us organised, and it's the most disorganised I've seen an Everton squad since the end of Martinez, I want to say, if I'm being generous to Koeman.
I mean, I'm going to say Koeman's kind of up there with his a million number 10s.
I think Koeman wasn't, I'm going to say he was all fairly treated. He had a bit of a tough start, Koeman, I agree to that one. Yeah, the recruitment was the issue with one. Again, there's a podcast alone on that recruitment for that summer of transfer window. But yeah, the rest of it, and also the red Christmas tree meant he had to go, obviously. Goes without saying. But yeah, so Benitez was just. We all said from day one, we're like, well, okay, if it works, great. What the hell? If it doesn't work, we know what's going to happen soon as. And I'm amazed he got himself to January.
Well, if you're shocking going forward, you at least hope you don't concede.
Exactly.
And the fact was, we were leaking.
Couldn't do either.
Yeah, we couldn't do either. It was just this kind
basically
of mess.
You're conceding goals, you're not scoring, you're going to lose games. That's not the most difficult equation to work out at any level.
Right, I've got a question for you. What was worse, Benitez at Everton or John Barnes at Tranmere? There's a podcast. There's a podcast.
We could go for a lot longer than 2 hours on that.
Hey, John Barnes or Mickey Adams?
I could go for 4 hours. I think the only thing that I can throw in the mix there is Benitez kind of, I wouldn't say he went quietly, but he kind of accepted his fate, possibly. Barnes was kind of full of every excuse under the sun. Which again is probably for another podcast, but yeah, very, very similar situation. Although at least Benitez was a has-been. Barnes had never done it anywhere he managed, so yeah.
I still remember the footage of him and McAteer trying to get the bike in the back of the car. They've been sacked. If you're not sure,
one of McAteer's mates rang and said for him to. So basically, there's a McAteer's there in his Range Rover or whatever. And John Barnes was riding his bike in, one as like a depth fit, and two, he was on a driving ban at the time. So McAteer turned round and basically told him that you couldn't cycle home after being sacked because that would be the headline on your bike. So they're there trying to fit his bike in the back of his Range Rover and can't do it because obviously they haven't got a brain cell between the two of them. And McAteer's phone goes and he's like this on the phone trying to push the bike in. And he said his mate had rang him and was telling him to turn the handlebar the other way. And he was like, why, where are you? And he was like, you're live on Sky Sports, turn the handlebars the other way, it'll go in.
Oh, I didn't know anything about that. I need to see this footage. That's
read up on it, it's the best.
My God, that's very Mike Bassett. Oh,
how long was he in charge for? 6 games? It wasn't that long at all.
Not long.
Too long.
It was about 11 or 12 games, but he got that I think
far.
he won 2 and lost the rest, something like that. Maybe drew 1 or 2, but all the defeats were 4-1 losses, and that they were heavy losses.
The fact that Les Parry came in from the physio role to actually keep Tranmere up that season says a lot about John Barnes' managerial prowess. The fact that literally the physio did a better job.
I forgot Les Parry took charge. He got the job permanent, didn't he, after that? Did he get a permanent job?
He did, yeah. I've got a pair of his shorts upstairs somewhere.
I hope they're football shorts, by the way.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Not personal.
I'm going to say that there's a podcast that's
selling his Calvin Klein on eBay, you know.
Unwashed, signed,
unwashed.
Oh.
Still smell the liniment on them.
So, I've got a question that isn't underpants or shorts related. Frank Lampard, he's fairly young, isn't he? And this is a question for Danny. Our Rochdale manager is fairly young. I think there's only about a year between Lampard and Stockdale. Do you think there's an advantage to having like a fairly young manager at the helm? Do you think there's something that's... Because you can see, obviously, Rafa, he's got to be in his 60s, hasn't he, and things like that. Do you think there's an advantage to having a younger manager?
Yeah and no. I believe, like, you look at Lampard, and he's obviously played the game at a much higher level than Stockdale ever did. Even within his coaching setups, all his coaching roles and things have been done at a much higher level than Stockdale's ever achieved. So I think he brings a lot of education with him anyway, whereas Stockdale's, he's very limited in what he's seen and played. I think they both play a very similar style of football. They're both quite attacking. They both like to come very wide, use the midfield ball players, get into the strikers early, get that high press. With Lampard, I think he's seen enough at a higher level where he can change a game and he's willing to adapt his tactics to suit other teams coming to Everton. Whereas with Robbie, there's just not much of a plan B there. There's no tactic switch. Substitutions are late. It seems to be all or nothing, whether that's the limited squad we've got, whether that's the recruitment that come in the summer, which obviously was just kind of thrown together last minute. He's brought a few more of his own players in now, but I don't seem to think there's much of a plan B there with Robert. That's solid. People say a 3 at the back with the 4 in midfield, but it's more of a 5 at the back. It's always very deep, very set in. And I think Lampard has that experience on his side rather than the age.
I think sometimes it can be a positive because obviously I think Tom mentioned before that Benitez is 10 years past his sell-by date. The question to the Everton fans, is age really a factor? Is that anything that you can look at and go, he's got his finger on the pulse a bit more? Is that anything to look at?
I think there's a point to it, because if you look at our track record with managers, obviously Ancelotti, Benitez, both older managers. Koeman, okay, while he's not old, was certainly of a slightly more senior generation than Lampard. I think when you look at it now, obviously a lot of the older managers will have done their badges years ago, or indeed a lot of them will have just been awarded their pro licence or been in football for a long time. The likes of Allardyce and so on were literally awarded it. They didn't have to actually do it because they've been in senior football for a certain amount of years. Whereas a lot of the younger generation of managers now have worked their way up during their playing career. They are more recently qualified and therefore more up to date with tactical innovations. And it's like with any job, really, isn't it? The younger you come in, the more recently you come in, you're more up to date with what's going on, whether it be teaching, whether it be graphic design, whether it be whatever it may be, So I do think there is a part of that, definitely, that does ring true. And as well, the energy levels that a younger manager brings, you can see the difference in the young players. The likes of Anthony Gordon particularly, even John Joe Kenny, who I have to say I've not been a fan of until literally Saturday. I just don't rate him, to be perfectly fair. But you can see the energy that Lampard brings compared to an older guy, because there's an enthusiasm about them. They've got more to prove. They've not been there and done it. As we said, it's that frontier that, yes, as players, they've done it, but as managers, they've got much more to prove than somebody like Ancelotti, who's won everything there is in the game. Benitez, who's won European Cups and leagues in Europe and so on. So I do think there's just the whole enthusiasm, the whole energy that runs through the club with a younger manager. It's like when we first got David Moyes in from Preston. He was only, I think, about 38, 39 at the time. He's not long retired from being, and he's a second division manager, and you could see the difference in the enthusiasm in the players, even the senior players, some of whom were like near the same age as him. That they loved having him around the place, because compared to God bless his soul, Walter Smith, who's obviously recently departed, the difference in the old style and the old sort of managerial ways that he'd done for the last 20, 30 years. Yeah, it was just oh God, what's he got there? It's just a different energy altogether. So I do think it does ring true.
I think Declan wants to show something that's what is it? I'll unmute you, hang on. What is it, Dec? Oh, hang on.
Quality contact and audio medium here, guys.
Couldn't find his shorts, but I've got his shirt there for you, look. Super Les.
I've got to ask,
did you just take all his clothes off him? How? Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant.
And did you just strip him down and just be like, I'm off?
I think I bought it in the club shop for £2.
Because there's two stories in my head here. There's two stories. One, I know you sit in the cop. So I reckon after a game that Les has won, he's got himself very, very excited and just stripped naked and thrown his stuff into the crowd.
He's gone full Tonka, just like...
Good on. Or you've got yourself into the dressing room or the kitman's room and thought of all the things I'll have Les Parry's top and shorts. That's where I'm going to go. So I'm a little bit concerned as to how you got home.
Top of the list. Tranmere bucket list ticked off. Anyway, back to the important stuff, gents.
How do we get Lampard's trousers?
So Jimmy was alluding to that Lampard might have his finger on the pulse a bit more than, say, some that are maybe over the hill, things like that. That's basically what you were saying, isn't it, Jim?
That feels like a long time ago now, but yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at the best managers. The best managers know how to adapt, and will adapt themselves to modern football. And some have a style that works, but only works for a short period of time. Look at Mourinho; he's doing okay at Roma, from what I understand. But yeah, there becomes a point where you've got to let the old guard go. I mean, Moyes has done really well at West Ham, and I'm kind of happy for Moyes, actually, because again, I think I always thought he was a good way of changing systems up and actually being quite on the pulse, even now as an older manager. And I think Lampard hopefully is in that same boat where he'll bring in fresh ideas from what he brings in, but he's learned from the best. He's worked under some of the best managers in world football at their time, and hopefully he's taken their best bits and not taken their worst bits.
I also saw an interview with him around the Euros. I think he'd just come on to do some punditry, and it was his first interview after Chelsea had won the Champions League under Thomas Tuchel. And he said, "Well, obviously, I'm delighted to see players that I've kind of brought up to go and win a medal, and obviously I'm a Chelsea fan." But he said it hurts, and it does hurt a lot, because I was working with that squad of players 4 months ago. And I think that would crush you a bit. And it's remarkable that he's taken the Everton job on so soon after that, losing that Chelsea one, because I think it shows the character of the man, that he wants to get back on the treadmill and he wants to right those wrongs. He also said in that Gary Neville overlap interview that the fact he didn't get Derby promoted is the biggest disappointment of his career. So I think he's got quite a low opinion of himself as a manager right now. And I think he knows, for him, really, Everton's last chance saloon. It either goes well and he moves on to a bigger job, which, reasonably could happen, or it goes badly and he doesn't work in the Premier League again.
Let's not forget, though, with Lampard as well, he was linked heavily with the Norwich job. And he was linked, I think, with the Palace job as well before Vieira got it. So he's had options to go into clubs in the Premier League. And I think he's bided his time as well. He's gone for a role that he thinks he can make a real difference to. I mean, I always had him down as getting the Palace job, to be perfectly honest, until obviously Vieira got it. Norwich, I wasn't sure he'd back himself in that situation. So I think he's been, yes, you might say he's got a low opinion of himself, but also he's known his own mind enough to go, right, no, that's not the right job for me to really make a difference here. I'm not going to make that impact at Norwich, or I'm not going to do what Crystal Palace, will want me to do. For example, I don't know if I can get the best out of myself with that group of players or with the way the club has the vision. So he has selected Everton as much as we've selected him as well, I think.
And that's important in any walk of life, isn't it? You know, they say when you go for a job interview, you're interviewing the employer as well as they're employing you. But I do think it rings true. You know, you could have Pep Guardiola showing up at Derby County right now. Is he what they need? Absolutely not. You could have Sam Allardyce showing up at Man City. You know, it's the same thing. You need to be aware of what fits you in that moment in time. And I think Lampard, well, the man's a member of Mensa. He's not soft. He's got an A level in Latin, an A and A level Latin. He's not your stereotypical kind of football mad guy. He's an intelligent, well-read, and introspective, forward-thinking manager, and it's refreshing to see. Actually, it feels like him and Gerrard to an extent are breaking away from this cliche of English managers, and you know, they're willing to accept new ideas, and like I said right at the top of the podcast, surround themselves with the people that they respect the most. And if Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard respect you as a coach, I have a feeling you're an alright coach.
Just looking at the I think it's absolutely spot on with everything there. I'm just looking at Everton's fixtures coming up. Obviously, Matt mentioned before about Southampton and Man City, but the next game after that is Boreham Wood in the FA Cup. Could you do anything with the FA Cup run? Is that anything that you could do there, Jim? Do you think new manager bounce in inverted commas? Could you do something in the FA Cup run?
Well, Matt and I and my dad, I think we're going to go to the Boreham Wood Cup game when the tickets go on sale. So naturally, it's going to be the biggest cup shock in the history of the FA Cup. If our record of going to games is anything to go by. Honestly, though, if you can't beat Boreham Wood, you don't deserve to win the FA Cup, and that's no disrespect. They're a very good non-league side, as Dak knows. Oh my word, they gave Rovers a few scares a few years ago. But look, my concern is we're absolutely abhorrent at getting results against sides above us. We do not beat the big teams, I don't think. We did last season when there was no crowd. Don't ask me how. But this year, the team looks utterly defeated against bigger sides, and ultimately, you know, you're going to have to go up against a Man City or a Liverpool or a Chelsea in the Cup at some point. It's a rite of passage. You know, you've got to beat at least one, if not two of them, to get through. And I don't think we've got that in us personally. I'd love to say we could go on and win it the way Leicester did last season, you know, or the way that Wigan did, or the way that, you know, whoever has done it. But I just think the quality at the top end of the league is far too strong, and I think one of those three takes the cup this season. I think they win the lot. Unfortunately, those kind of sides, sadly.
I genuinely think we're still in the relegation dogfight. I don't care about the cup right now. If you know, Boreham Wood show up, play the kids, you know, you might end up getting embarrassed, but we have to stay in the Premier League. I can't emphasise how important that is for the development of the new stadium, for Mashiri staying involved, taking care of his asset. It all relies on us staying in the Premier League. And until we hit 40 points, which, by the way, is quite a lot off where we are. I'll just get the number for you now. Well, how much are we on now? We're in the 20s, aren't we? We need to start picking up wins. Yeah, 22 points in 22 games. That is relegation form still. So we have to go, and we have to win this weekend, and then we move on from there.
Yeah, just to echo what Tom's saying there, I think there's massive. I'm just again having a little look at FotMob. There's massive pressure to go and get 3 points there against Southampton. You've got 13 league games left following Southampton. You've got, not in order, but you've still got to play Man City. You've got to play Tottenham. You've got to play West Ham. You've got to play United. You've got Liverpool. You've got Chelsea, Leicester, and Arsenal. So if you look at those sides, do you know what I mean? You've got a few others, you know, your Brentfords and your Palaces and whatnot, where you should be picking points up. But there's a lot of those big hitters in there, and the likes of, you know, your Southampton game there, on Saturday is absolute. That's your bread and butter, isn't it? As you're saying there, I know obviously a cup run is brilliant, and the fans love a cup run, but I think you're dead right. That league's got to be number one, hasn't it? There's a lot. I think there's more riding on it for Everton in the short term than there is any other club down that end of the table. No doubt that if Everton did go down, they'd come back up, based on the size of the club, the players that they'd attract and so on. But as you're saying, in terms of Bramley Moore, in terms of your investors and so on, there's a lot riding on it at the minute.
We've also lost to every team below us, so it's a curious mix at the moment. Jim, you were saying, Jimmy, we can't beat sides above us. I think we're having trouble with those below us as well. That Newcastle game was such a blow to watch us. I'm a firm believer in you can lose games, but there's a way to lose games. And watching us that night, that was reminiscent of the worst of Martinez or the worst of Koeman. There was that kind of insipid, stale performance, and I think a lot of it comes from, I think, the amount of mentally fragile players we have. I think they're very, very reactionary to crowds, to momentum of games, to refereeing decisions. I think they don't have that coldness that top players have. We are renowned for buying players from top clubs like Barcelona, we've had a few from Man United in the past that haven't quite cut it at the top level. And I think that's because they often don't have that mental strength to survive at the top. So they come to us because we're the next best thing. But what that does result in is a team that goes to St James's Park, a team that goes to the likes of Selhurst Park, Villa Park, the Etihad, and just absolutely crumbles under pressure. And that's why when we're on a bad run of form, there's no worse stadium in the country than Goodison Park, because we'll get, did you see that Ben Foster clip where he was talking about getting in the fans' heads? And it was depressing to hear, because I go every week and I feel that way. There was one moment, I think it was earlier on the season. I think it was Leicester, I'm not too sure. It was someone we kind of lost to. Anyway, and Michael Keane's just playing the ball at the back with Mason Holgate. And he's kind of looking up, but he's not moving the ball forward quickly enough for the crowd. And this is at 0-0, by the way. And instead of, just carrying the pass and going, keeping the 1-2 touch going, he ends up booting it 40 yards out and it goes for an opposition throw-in. And that was because the fans were jumping on his back for not getting the ball up the pitch. But he couldn't do right for doing wrong. Now, he doesn't have that mental strength to go, you know what, I'm just going to carry on passing here. I'm going to play 2-touch with Holgate and just see if we can find that opening. Instead, the fans put him into a position where you concede a lazy turnover. So I'm not saying the fans are the problem, but they certainly the players need to start building or growing their mental strength in order to make sure that we thrive as a club.
I'm just looking at the ratings from the Everton Leeds United game at the weekend. And I know it's only one game and you can look too much into it, but the large majority of them have got 8 out of 10, 7.5, all above. Gordon 9.1, Van der Beek 7. They're all 7 and above. Is that something you think they can continue? That they're all playing somewhat good? Like if you look at the average ratings of all of them, are all high 7s and above. And obviously, is it new players, Dele Alli, Van der Beek? Is that something that they can continue? Do you think going to the end of the season, it can just 7 and above every week, consistency, or is that not possible? Do you think?
We've always got a stinker in us, I mean, there'll be at least one more game where we get battered this season. If I was a betting man, I'd go to bookies immediately and say we will lose 3 or 4-0 at one point again this season.
We've got to go Anfield next.
Well, exactly. So
I say the Anfield derby is usually a bit of a spanking. So
yeah, but
last season.
Yeah, it could be Boreham Wood. You never know. This club finds new ways. But it's a case, I think, of just winning the game in front of you. As cliched as that sounds, as boring as that sounds, we've got to be looking at that Southampton game now and going, that's a cup final. And then we've got to look at the game after that, which I think is Man City. And I know it's Man City, and you're next to guaranteed a loss. But we've got to say, no, we're not going to roll over. We're going to treat these like we'll treat any other side, and we're going to go out for 3 points. I don't want to see any of this kind of Benitez, Ancelotti ball where, we'll put 10 men on the goal line and hope. I want to see us try and go toe to toe. And if we lose 4-0, we lose 4-0. So what? But Martinez actually came out with a great quote in his first season. It's better to die on your feet than live on your knees. And I think that's what the Everton fans expect. I do want to see us fighting for every ball, because I think the Goodison crowd responds to that. I think it's when it's meek, when it's cowardly, when it's directionless. I think that's when Everton fans get their backs up. And hopefully, judging off Saturday, Lampard is going to give them the tools to do that. But going back to your question, can they do 7 or 8 every week? If they could do that, mate, we'd be finishing in the top 4. And I know this club well, and I'm fully expecting a very poor performance at the weekend. But that's the life of I don't know about a Dale fan, but certainly the life of an Everton fan.
Absolutely, yeah. We can't put a finger on these. That's a win, that's a loss, and we can't guarantee points and wins these days. Quick one for Jimmy. We'll just have a few more minutes on Everton, and then we'll go into League 2 with Dale and Tranmere. We spoke about the remaining fixtures for Everton. Obviously, we've got some big hitters in there that Matt mentioned: City, Liverpool, somewhat United in there. I think Arsenal possibly. I mean, in a few weeks' time, you play Tottenham. Tottenham are a strange team, aren't they, on paper? And just looking at their up and down all over the place, the 8th or something like that. Fair enough, that's a position that Everton would fairly, like to be in, you could say. But do you think these teams that are just sort of up and down, that's the one where you need to be looking at as we can have these? Or is that not the Everton way?
I think that game is very much dependent on... it's hard to really say, because with Tottenham at the moment, you'd say, advance your chances. They've had a poor run of form. They had 3 games in hand when they were 7th, and they've played the 3 games in hand, and they're now 8th. So that is what, to quote, Spursy. But if anyone can out-Spurs, it's Everton. And let's be honest, I think Spurs will have turned it around a bit by then. If it was a Goodison, I'd have fancied our chances more. But like you say, with a mentally sort of weak squad, if the Spurs fans get on top of them, and it's a big old stadium to be at. We won there last season, an empty Tottenham stadium, but obviously now it's been full of 60,000 Spurs fans looking for a reaction under Conte, who doesn't take any messing, who I think is a brilliant manager. Look, it's winnable, but then, when you look at like Southampton going there winning, Wolves going there winning, but I just think Spurs are getting their blip out the way now, and they might finish the season quite well. I don't know. It's a strange game. I think, as Tom pointed out before, yes, we can't beat the sides below us. We have to be looking at the games. I'd be looking at more like the Leicester games. I'd be looking at even, weirdly, I'd fancy us away at West Ham more than I would at Tottenham at the moment, because you never quite know what West Ham are going to do. Yes, they're doing really well, but Moyes is David Moyes. He's always got an absolute shit show performance in him as a manager, once every so often. Those are the kind of games I'd be pinpointing. But look, if we just, like we say, just go toe to toe with everyone and just see what happens. There's worse things you can do than try your absolute bloody best to beat any team, and that includes, City at home, Arsenal away, which, we've already beaten Arsenal at Goodison, okay, somewhat fortuitously. Why not go there the final day, especially if there's anything riding on it? We're going to have to go there and bloody well win, potentially, if things pan out the way they may do. I just think give it a good go. Every team in this league, with the exception of maybe a City, Liverpool, every team in this league is beatable. And I think even then, every team's lost games this season, so you just don't know. But at the same time, this is Everton. We can, as to quote Gennaro Gattuso, sometimes good, sometimes shit. Most of the time shit this season.
Just a quick one, obviously, on we've not really touched that much on the transfer window. I mean, we have and we haven't, but are you fairly happy with Matt, with the players that have come in so far?
Yeah, I mean, Patterson looks decent fullback. I like the look of Michaelenko. I think he's given a bit of a tough start. He's, coming in off the back of the Lucas Dean stuff, and you come from a very, very different league. Van de Beek looks like the kind of player we've needed for a long time in midfield. Who could just link the play up quite beautifully. And Dele Alli, if that assist had gone in from Rondon, I don't know what I would have done. It would have been one of our goals of the century. It was an amazingly good ball. And a hell of a save from... I forgot the name of the Leeds keeper. Melier, that's it. It was a hell of a save. But yeah, they bought... Like I said before, we're probably a centre-back short. Just because of injuries. Jeremina plays game, and he's off for 6 weeks. Michael Keane is a confidence player, and I think go back to Lampard and that kind of stuff, I think he's come out and said that he's given them a bit more freedom to get the ball forward without the threat of worrying too much about it. But yeah, I think we're a centre-back still short. Ben Godfrey's obviously going to be a big miss for the next about 6 weeks. As is a few players, Decore's been a big miss as well. And that's the thing, look at the season. Yes, tactically we've been pretty inept. We have suffered with injuries like any team would do. We lost Calvert-Lewin for so long. Richarlison's had his injuries here and there. Damari Gray went off injured a few weeks last week, I think it was, week before last. So I can't go. They've brought in the players that we needed. He's brought in players that he wanted, which was tough to do when you had a day to do it. Well, more than a day, unofficially, but you had about a day to do it. But yeah, I can't complain. Can't complain at all.
Sports Social Podcast Network.